Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast Podcast YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist slash secular slash awesome community. This is episode number 195. I recorded this interview on June 30th, 2019. Thanks to Ree Conley for coming on and telling her harrowing tale of surviving a cult, and not only surviving, but thriving. If you're D&D curious, you might want to look her up on Facebook and see what it's all about. They have cupcakes. I believe all of us need a break and a little laugh from time to time. There's nothing that brings the consistent yucks than making fun of a deity. Luckily, Tony, or Tony, of Queensland, Australia, has a connection with the big guy. It took months of negotiations and some pictures he procured of God, the Falwells, a pool boy, and some unripe avocados to turn things around. Conversations with God is almost exactly what you'd imagine talking to the real Yahweh is like. You'd think it's tedious, but it's the kind of heat that builds in the background, and it keeps the episode short. We have our first impromptu song in show history. We discover who God's real favorite son is, and what Tony's favorite insult of the King of Kings. Let's start the conversation.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you? Well, would you like to know where you'd be without us, the old US of A, to protect you? I'll tell you. The smallest fucking province in the Russian Empire. That's what.
Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast. Tony, Conversations with God. Now, 195 episodes, and finally, we're going to talk to somebody who talks to God. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going really good. It's a shame it's taking you this long to actually get us on, but that's fine. You know, we can work with it. How are you?
Good. God has a long waiting period, is what I hear. Anyway,
He's in demand. Yeah, that's for sure.
so you are located in Australia, which apparently is a real country. And what time is it there?
It's 8 a.m, and it's not to be confused with Austria, which is in Europe. It's Australia, which is kind of the other side of the planet. Yes, 8 a.m. It's a Monday. Yeah, a nice, beautiful, sunny day in Australia.
Well, I'm in America, and it's 6 p.m., so it's beer o'clock, and that's why you should never assume that I know where a country is, because apparently nothing else exists.
That's not true of everybody.
Well, we'll see. We will find out. Of course, the usual official show beer, Dragon's Milk. We'll see if God drives me to drink more. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I usually do like an out of context quote, and your show, of course, is perfect for that. So when you say the following quote, I'm not sure if you're talking about your own podcast, the Bible, or God.
Okay.
It really is a load of bollocks, isn't it?
Yeah, probably about the podcast. No, in all seriousness, that is usually about religion. When I'm trying to sort of get an answer out of God, when I'm trying to pin him down on the difficult questions that we have for him, he usually worms out of it. And I don't usually say, but yeah, as I've said, it really is a load of bollocks, isn't it? In reference to his doctrines and his rubbish book, his toilet paper book.
You got it. Oh, upside down. I think it might be the first time someone's had one
It's
on the show.
upside down because it's in Australia.
Of course, just like the toilets don't flush.
Well, they do. Yeah, they supposedly the water goes either way, but that's I've never actually stood and watched the toilet water flush. To be honest, it's not. Yeah,
It's true. Now, all the things you don't notice. So, why did you think in the wild, wild world of podcasts that you wanted to do a show where you talk to God? What was like the origin story of this?
I didn't know I wanted to talk to God. The there's
You do.
there's a lot of podcasts, especially there's a lot of atheist podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts with talking heads where people chat. And I wanted to do something within the community, but I didn't want to do another podcast. I wanted to do something different. And I was toying around with a couple of ideas and ended up messing around one day and sort of made a bit of a voice for God. And yeah, it sort of took me 3 or 4 months. And all of a sudden, I'm sort of 40 episodes in. So it's just, you know what? It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of serious podcasts out there. There's a lot of people that get into the nitty gritty, like your show. I've listened to a couple of yours, and there's some tough topics you discuss. But I kind of wanted to do something lighthearted that would make people hopefully have a bit of a think about how silly it is, but also mainly try and have a bit of a laugh, try and sort of see the lighter side of it all, because it can, especially in the US, it's very, very pervasive. It's, you know, you guys are kind of, it's a massive thing over there, religion. It kind of dictates a lot of what goes on. So I just wanted to do something to sort of, you know, make people smile a bit. And mocking God, which is low-hanging fruit, seemed like a perfect opportunity.
Well, for someone who has never experienced your show, and shame on you if you haven't experienced the show, what is kind of like your elevator pitch for what the show is?
Well, it's dead simple. The premise of this appalling.
Sorry, I said elevator. That's American. Lift. Anyway.
Yeah, lift. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
The premise is to have open, deep, and frank discussions with the creator of the universe, God. I always put God at the end of that. So yeah, that's what it is. Just to ask God the difficult questions, hold him to task, and try and get some sense out of him as to some of the stupid things that he's created.
Now, would you have a different elevator pitch for someone who you know is a theist?
Yeah, you can get insights into the things that your pastor never taught you in church. Because
they tell you it's all the truth. Come on.
It's like the opposite of what a pastor says in church. It's basically just taking all of the bits that are negative and bad, which is most of the Old Testament, and sort of mocking it and trying to sort of get God to answer why he did some of the ridiculous things that he did do.
Well, one of the best questions sometimes that can be asked of like an actor is like, well, how do you get into the head space of someone you're playing who is different from you? So how do you kind of occupy the God space?
Okay, so you have to think tunic, sandals, beard, hair, and then floating in space, looking down on Earth. You know, like with sort of angels singing and like bright lights shining. Then you're there. Then, you know, it's quite easy. It's not hard. Ego as well, like massive ego. Arrogant. The list goes on.
Now, what's like the format for the show? Like this is sometimes I get people and their shows are like super long, and you have a nice kind of commute sized show.
That's the whole one of the big things I wanted to make sure I did was not to go on and on and on. It's not a long form. It's not a nuanced long form podcast. It's very short. It's very to the point. They're usually between 15, 25 minutes long. We try and keep it nice and fast. And and it's basically cut up into segments. So we'll do like in the episode that's coming out tomorrow, we'll do a section called God Bingo, where me and God go and play bingo, which is a lot of fun. We do cooking tips from the Lord, so we'll go into God's kitchen, and basically he'll give us some cooking tips. Recently, he's done cooking tips for the blind. That included not wearing long sleeves if you're using gas. So some really important tips for cooking. We do a segment called Questions from Mortals, where people email in and ask God questions, about their share portfolio, about weather, about their husband's funeral, and God gives a nice, caring, deity-based answer to these questions. We've done movie reviews. What else did we do? Yeah, at the moment we're sort of each episode we're going through God's top 10 diseases, which is great fun. And I often get him to explain a little bit about the disease as well, and see if he can sort of shed some light on how we can avoid these diseases. So yeah, it's kind of a fast pace. We usually do 2 episodes a month, and yeah, that's kind of the format.
And how many episodes so far?
We're up to 40. Number 40 is coming out tomorrow. We've also had a guest on. We had him on twice. I know God's the main guest, but we also had a Mormon on for one episode early on, Jed. We had a bit of a chat to him, and then he after our chat, he actually saw the light, if you will, went off the rails a bit, started drinking and womanizing, and ended up dying. So a few months later, we had Jed on again from heaven, and he was telling us all about God's rubbish, overcrowded heaven and what it's like up there.
Yeah, that's one part of your show. You get little glimpses. You ask God, who he's seen in heaven. And I like the kind of random celebrities. Like we had Bon Scott and Neil Armstrong, which is nice. The original lead singer of AC/DC. Because that's very rock and roll. I appreciate that.
I believe they were fighting over a leather jacket.
I know. It's like, what do you think? You try to imagine, like you try to ask like a theist, like what is heaven going to be like? Oh, it's just going to be amazing all the time. And it's like, no, it's 2 guys haggling over a leather jacket. Yeah. Like it's even amazing heaven, like is going to be mundane pretty quickly. So yeah, you got to keep it interesting and negotiate over jackets.
Well, we chat whenever we mention heaven. I always call it God's rubbish, overcrowded heaven. I just imagine we've gone through the numbers, and there's if you look at the stats of how many people have ever died, there'd be trillions of people up there. So it's just going to be complete mayhem as far as I'm concerned.
That's true. But we don't talk. Whoever had a discussion about hell.
Have we discussed it yet?
Yeah, didn't you have a prank call with the devil?
The devil, yeah, we did prank call the devil. And I think the last episode, 39 or 38, we actually prank called Donald Trump, which was funny. We flushed the toilet. Basically, we just rang him up, called him on the phone. He answered, and we just flushed the toilet on him. That's what we do. So it's very highbrow. It's very nuanced.
I know. God has a very highbrow sense of humor, clearly. I mean, come on.
Read the Old Testament. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Now, when it comes to shows, I usually ask about, guests, but clearly your main guest is God. Was that a tough booking initially? It seems like now that you're like a regular, you're in, but was it tough getting in there initially?
It was very tough. He was very reluctant. There were quite a few stipulations. He basically wanted an out at any time, but he's been pretty good. He does turn up. He doesn't do anything else. He just turns up. I have to do everything else, all the editing. He just basically rocks up and avoids the questions that we ask him and makes a bit of a tit out of himself. But yeah, initially it was hard. But I think he wants to change his perception of people or his people's perception of him, which he's not doing, and he hasn't done so far. But I think he finds prayer overwhelming. Just the simple sheer volume of prayers that he gets each day. He can't sort through all of them. So I think he sees the podcast as a way of just being able to, for 20 minutes, twice a month, just kind of impart some of his wisdom onto the masses. And I help him. I'm the conduit. I'm his podcast Jesus, if you will.
Nice. Now, would you bring in other gods or just the one?
Yeah, we have started some initial conversations with the devil, but God, he was just like, no, if you're going to talk to him, I'm out. So, I mean, look, it's going on. My people are talking to his people, but we haven't sort of sorted anything else yet. But no, God is the only deity so far. He's far too egotistical and maniacal to consider sharing the twice 20-minute podcast a month with any other deities.
Well, I wasn't raised religious, but I do hear that God is a jealous God. So you're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So in the course of your show, you have found out God's first name and the name of his other son. Would you care to give either of these away, or do you want people to listen and find out on their own?
Yeah, maybe have a listen. I mean, it's a bit of a revelation that he's got another son. And as he said, I said, look, mate, it's been thousands of years. The doctrine, the experts, everybody says God gave his only son. What's with having another one? And he said, well, and as he rightly said, it's a long time ago. Things change. So yeah, his new son, or his newer son, Frank, he'll be taking over the reins at some point when God decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. Be God, that is. He doesn't want Jesus doing it. So, but yeah, that's in episode 38, and that episode is simply called Frank, who is his other son. But yeah, there's some great insights into some of his plans. And one of the things that concerned me was that when you do retire, are we going to have to call the podcast Conversations with Frank? It just doesn't have the same ring to it as Conversations with God. But anyway, as he said, that's not my problem, Tony.
Maybe that's like an honorary title, so it'll just go forward. But will Jesus get to make an appearance, or is God like, no?
Jesus is pretty flaky. He's always complaining. He's kind of. I don't think so. Like, God doesn't sort of really want. Again, God doesn't really have room for anybody else on the show apart from him. He's kind of he likes being the star. So I don't want to push him. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Exactly, like the mind of God. I mean, come on, you shouldn't be. It's like to even think about it should make your head explode. But oddly, it doesn't happen that way. Now, there is. In one episode, there was a reference to God's wife. So is God a monogamist?
Yeah, he doesn't really talk about that a lot. And I've kind of pushed him on, well, do you... Obviously, with Jesus, he impregnated a non-consenting woman on earth. He doesn't seem to see a problem with that. I do, and I think any normal person would. But yeah, I think she's his rock, basically. She's there supporting him 100%. But I've never had the opportunity to speak to her. As a massive misogynist, I'm not sure if he's just kind of keeping her at bay. Zach, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, do you? Or closed gates, in his case, in heaven. You just don't know what goes on there. So I don't want to push. I'd love to chat to her. But yeah, so far there's been nothing. Yeah.
Well, I've heard that people project their own wants, fears, and beliefs into their God. So by this logic, have you been a fan of the double denim in the past, socks with sandals, and did you ever sport a mullet?
Yes, I did have a mullet. I'm going to be totally honest about that. I'm not going to lie, because there is photographic evidence that can back that up. Double denim, yes, and I'm ashamed to say that I actually did wear double denim and have a mullet at the same time when I was younger. But I didn't wear socks and sandals while I had the mullet and was wearing double denim. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
You have definitely burned some pictures of all this.
Yeah.
One. I just wondered if the same unfortunate fashion trends that were in America were in England and Australia. So to get kind of personal, so when did you, because you're originally from England, right? And we, of course, in America always have trouble figuring out the whole colonies thing, even though you used to own us and all. And don't get mad about the whole July 4th thing. It's nothing personal. It kind of is, but
no, it's all good. it's an
Where are
evolving
you
civilization.
originally from, and like, how did you get to Australia?
So yeah, I was born in England, and lived in England most of my life, and then I ended up moving to Australia probably about 12 years ago now. Um, love Australia, love England as well, but personal circumstances dictated that's what ended up happening. So yeah, so I grew up in lovely England. In terms of a religious upbringing, not really one there. People don't really give a shit there. It's not really a big thing. Like it is in America, it's completely different. However, the odd thing is when you go to school in England, you are taught a lot about religion, and it's kind of religion with a little r. But yeah, your head is pumped full of annoying hymns and songs, and you have to do your nativity at Christmas. You know what nativity is? Like the play about the birth of Jesus.
Oh yeah, we have that, although it's
Yeah,
kind of
cool.
on steroids.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of like diet religion in England.
Hmm.
Easter, you talk about Jesus getting nailed to the cross and all that, and coming back to life. It's all that sort of. It's like I say, diet religion. It's not full on, but it still really annoys me that it was even there. Up until I was in high school, like I could have been learning something useful about the universe or about how to manage money or how to get a job, but instead they just pump this crap into your head. And I actually remember at school when I was probably about 14 or 15 challenging the religious education teacher about it, saying, "Oh, I'm not doing this. I don't think any of this is true," and he'd keep me back after school or at lunchtime and try and sort of talk me around. And it's just like I don't know why we're learning this. Um, and then really when I left school, I didn't really think about it that much. Like you don't. I think when you're young, you're just trying to sort life out. And then I got a bit older and a bit grumpier, and a bit sort of more annoyed with it. And um, yeah, I just kind of um, gravitated towards the atheists community. And at that time, there was a lot of podcasts coming out, a lot of people talking about it. And I discovered what a pervasive thing it was in the US, like how sort of ingrained it is and how much it kind of has a place in society. Yeah, and I was just fascinated with the whole, I suppose, uprising of the atheist community. Being able to speak out, having a platform, having podcasts, YouTube, all these areas, and it's just something I've really kind of enjoyed watching. And then I thought, I want to get involved, but I want to sort of do something, like I said at the start, something a little bit different that isn't. Because I imagine scheduling guests could be quite hard work, Zach. Hey, because sometimes they can't do it, and it's not an
Yeah,
easy thing.
sometimes they won't bring God on, and sometimes they're like 22 hours different from you or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's
That
painful.
math is
Yeah, yeah,
horrible. But I mean, that's one thing that's really interesting about England. It's almost like a version of talking to someone who's Jewish, because like your identity is very important, but the religious part isn't there. And in England, like you have an official church, but
yeah.
people don't really, they just kind of like, I mean, they even like officially pay for the church. I mean, we kind of do in America, but definitely in England. But the belief is definitely dropping, and that's interesting. And I
Yeah.
don't think when I'm going to say when we become a theocracy, it's not quite going to be like that here. But we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see how it
it's
goes.
it's kind of like you grow up and you say, I'm a Christian, but you don't. But a lot of people would say they're Christian in England, but they don't actually believe in God. It's kind of a cultural thing, but it certainly is nowhere near as toxic as it is in the US. Nowhere near.
Is
Well,
it
not where I was from anyway.
similar? I mean, I know you've only been in Australia for 12 years, but is it similar to England in the kind of religiosity? Do they just go with the Anglican Church, and do people actually,
Yeah,
is it part of schooling and kind of part of the
no,
culture?
no. There's a lot of Catholic schools in Australia. There are religious schools here, but no, in your what they called state schools, so government schools. No, it's not taught at all, and it's kept very separate as well. So there's a big sort of buffer, if you will, which is great. So it's quite a secular country. So, yeah, similar to the UK essentially. Yeah, for sure. But nicer weather.
So we'll have to get back to God because he's gonna get upset if he doesn't get enough airtime. I think that's how it works. God and podcast hosts, ego level sometimes almost the same. So did God really had not seen movie classics like Star Wars and Jaws before your show?
No, and this is the frustrating thing. When I started to say to him, look, I think I think what people really want to hear is your take on classic movies. And he agreed initially. So I'd send him the video that we're going to watch, or the movie we're going to watch that week, and review on the podcast. And he'd
So what
never
format
watched them.
would you send? Do you send him like a Betamax or a VHS? Do you have a? I'm just curious.
Oh,
What format does God use? I feel like God might be a little old school.
yeah, no, he definitely is. But he's got his own streaming system up there, similar to Netflix. But
Ooh.
there's no restriction on his streaming forum. It's just pretty much whatever he wants.
It'd be interesting to hear God talk about all these bad, but with higher production values, like movies like the God's Not Dead type movies that actually have like pretty good production values and actors you've heard of, but might be a little bit ashamed of their work. And then the writing's awful, but just what God would say about that.
Yeah, so he doesn't watch the movies. What he does watch, though, is the trailer. And then he tried to do the movie review of just watching the trailer. And as we know, that's not going to work. But yeah, what can you do? So we stopped doing the movie reviews. Them again at some point. I suppose if he because he's fascinated by Nicolas Cage movies. So we could do the review, but just with Nicolas Cage movies. But I don't know, after Con Air, might get a little bit boring.
Well, he did I don't know if they did a sequel, but like they did a Left Behind with him in it, and it was kind of perfect.
Yes, I think that's why
now is he's pretty much like, I'll do anything.
Yeah, I think that's why God's fascinated with him. Just the sheer volume of movies he's done, and the fact that he was in Left Behind. I think it's him and Mel Gibson as well. He likes Mel Gibson.
Oh, I bet. Well, I don't know. Mel Gibson kind of gave a lot of love to Jesus, and I feel like that's a topic you can't bring up.
Yeah, well, I think he sees him as like a surrogate father, Jesus. So I think God's happy that he's taking the heat off him a little bit.
So do you ask God like, hey, what's going to be next for the cooking tips, or you pretty much say, okay, just go for it, just let him, improv?
Well, it's the one part of the show that I like him to take the reins on. So yeah, basically because there's a theme tune to it, so the theme will start and it goes, God's kitchen, cooking tips from the Lord. It's God's kitchen. And then I'll say, he's mad, he's bad, he lives in space. What have you got all over your face? What's your cooking tip? And then he'll just go into his cooking tip, whether it's microwaving peas, because that's a lot quicker than actually boiling the water and putting the peas in and then waiting for them to cook. I don't know whether you knew that, Zach, but you can just put peas in a bowl of water and then put them in the microwave and hit start. And now you got perfect peas in about 45 seconds.
This is mind-blowing stuff right here.
Yeah, and this is the sort of thing that people on Earth need to know. The followers want to hear. It's.
Well, I was wondering, because you say, God's in space. Does he have anything to say about like that space, like ice cream, all that freeze-dried stuff, or does he, have his own little special kitchen?
Yeah, we actually built a kitchen on Earth from the patrons. So patrons that obviously patron the show. We built a kitchen, so that's where God comes in. It's a professional kitchen, so he's in there. It's got all the professional steamers, and it's. If you listen to the podcast, you'll hear in the background a very convincing kitchen sound, like the sizzling and cooking going on. So it's that's one of the things we bought with the Patreon money. We also started an airline. I don't know if you heard that podcast.
Ooh, the airline.
Yeah, we did an episode from the cockpit of the Boeing 737. It's fantastic.
This is like very technologically advanced podcast where I just throw something on YouTube. So, beer's off to you. We have to, in this day and age, atheist community, we have to be a little controversial. So now I have to tell you, Tony, that you're doing damage to the atheist community. Many believers of God say that atheists are mad at God, and now you have a podcast that's just you being mad at God. So what do you have to say for yourself?
I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say, really.
I don't know if you're allowed to say you're sorry. You're supposed to blame it on somebody else, or say that, God thinks you're okay for being mad at him, so that's cool. The other gods, that don't matter.
No, the other gods don't matter. He's the only one that matters, literally. I feel. Look, I don't want to do this, Zach. I feel like I'm duty bound to do this. I think that if it wasn't me, it'd be somebody else. That's how I look at it. And I'm kind of taking one for the team, if you will. Or not, or you might think not, or you might think me giving this ridiculous deity a platform is a bad thing to do.
Ooh, now we're getting to platforming. I don't know if I can go there.
Yeah,
what does God think of? Does God actually think of atheists? Since obviously he's talking to an atheist.
Yeah, he just thinks we're joking. Literally, he just thinks that. Of course, you believe in me. Like we think religious people like. Really, do you actually honestly really think that? It's kind of like that, but that's spun around. It's just like, of course you believe in me. You're talking to me. And it's a good point. Yeah, yeah.
Now, why doesn't God curse? Because, on this show, you're totally free to curse, but on your show, God's pretty PG-13 at most.
He dropped an F-bomb, I think, in episode 37, but I did have to bleep that out. Yeah. But no, he does swear, but I do cut it out, and I try and keep him. In fact, in one of the recent episodes, we did do a list of all the cuss words that he uses, but they're not really. And you're right, they are PG-13. But he did get angry and tell me to fuck off a few episodes ago.
So what's the deal with God's skin issues, and what does it mean you have to do extra cleaning in your studio?
Yeah, well, he's millions of years old. He's going to be flaky. And we did a recent episode. It's a parody on. I was going to say Stephen Hawkins. Then Richard Dawkins. I always get Richard Dawkins and Stephen Hawkins confused. We did a parody on Richard Dawkins' book, and the episode was called "The God Dandruff and the Flaky Skin Delusion." And there was a lot in there about because he's flaky, and if it's warm in Australia. And if I've got the fan on in the studio, then there's just bits of skin flying around everywhere. It's quite off-putting. So, we talked about him getting microdermabrasion and using moisturizer. But he doesn't listen. He refuses to rub moisturizer into his face for some reason. And there's a new episode out tomorrow that's coming out, and his beard catches fire. So that's fun because we have to put that out.
We have to put that. Yeah, that'd be serious. Like you get the fire extinguisher and
we had to get the Conversations with God fire extinguisher out, and it burnt his whole beard off. But we managed to put it out, and it revealed that he had a very, very small chin once his beard had gone. So we chat about that for a bit. Like you'd expect God to have this Charlton Heston esque profile, but he's got a very, very small chin. He looks like Allah Assad Assad, the guy who runs Afghanistan at the moment.
So America knows that. It's just the country we've been at war at for 19 years now, 18 years. Oh my gosh.
Proxy war with Russia. Yep.
Nobody. I know it's weird. We were with the other side just a little while ago, and it's very, very sad. So this is gonna be tough. This is like asking someone their favorite child. Do you have a favorite insult of God?
Probably bubble brain, because it just makes me laugh calling somebody bubble brain, especially him.
And we have bubble brain, maggot face, you massive blood spasm, your toilet paper paged book, orange brain, your dirty pile of soiled trousers floating in space.
Yep, that's it.
Now, have you ever asked to take a ride on God's space helicopter?
Oh no. Because he's crap at flying it. So I've seen him fly it. He flies it around. In fact, at the end of which episode was it? Yeah, episode 39, God is Dead. He actually flew his helicopter so badly it just exploded in the air. So no, I'm not going in his helicopter. I've flown a Boeing 737 with him. He let me be the captain, and he was the co-pilot. I think we were 10 meters from the ground, and he looks over to me and says, "Should I put the wheels down?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." So that's the sort of idiot that you're sharing this flying aviation beast with. So I don't think I'll go in his helicopter. No, definitely not. Would you go in God's magic space helicopter?
Oh, sure. My mom used to make a joke that when she thought she was getting like Alzheimer's, she was going to die, she was going to go on the Siberian Railroad, which apparently is attacked by terrorists all the time. And I'm like, That sounds like God's helicopter. If I'm, feel like I'm near the end and my insurance is paid up, sure, we'll do it.
Let's go out with a bang.
Exactly. Now, when you do a podcast, generally speaking, you talk yourself up. You do a lot of social media, but it seems like you're not a Facebook, Twitter guy. So what's happening there? What's up with you and social media?
It's never going to catch on, Zach, that sort of thing.
Social media? Yeah.
Nah, it's not. It won't catch on.
It's a fad.
It is. I did do it when I first started, but I just found it really annoying. It really pissed me off. It's just, you just get notifications. Well, I didn't get notifications all the time, but I don't know. I just didn't enjoy that. I find it all a bit disingenuous, if I'm honest. And I just wanted to sort of focus my time on making an awful podcast rather than atting people and hashtagging things. So we've got an email address, which is, I say it quite a lot in the podcast. It's conversationswithgodpodcast@gmail.com. Email me, just send me an email. Don't tweet me or Facebook me. I just don't. Plus I'm what's the word? Technologically challenged. I just don't understand Facebook. I had it, I set it up, and then I just didn't know who was doing what on it, and it was just confusing. God didn't know either. So between the two of us, unless somebody that can, or unless somebody wants to take the reins of those two things and do it, then I'm not doing it. It's just too much of it just annoyed me.
Well, I think you just need to go the path of becoming a prophet. Then you'll have like minions who will do your bidding for free, which I think a lot of podcasters do anyway. But, you got God in your corner. I feel like you got an advantage, right?
Yeah, well, we have chatted a few times about him opening his giant wallet and helping us out with money. But he doesn't seem, he's just, he just shuts down. As soon as you start talking about money to him, he shuts down. As there's hosting fees, there's website fees. He doesn't want to know. He just rocks up in his giant tunic, just talks rubbish for 20 minutes and then goes. That's the commitment he's got to the podcast.
I mean, you could definitely ask him about, okay, so that whole tithing thing, like how much of that gets to you? Does it, because I've heard it trickle down. I've heard much of trickle up. So does God even get into that?
We've actually talked about tithing. We've done that in one of the episodes. So yeah, go and have a listen. But you're dead right. Like it's, and I encourage the atheists that listen, or non-atheists that listen to the show. I'm not going to discriminate. You can tithe in your own way to the Patreon. Give 10% of $5 to us each episode. It's a way of supporting us and getting God's word out to the masses. Yeah.
Seems like there's not much, it's not much to ask, really.
I don't think so. The model of podcasting is really interesting, isn't it? You just spend a lot of time doing it. But hey, look, the way I look at it is nobody asked me to make this podcast. So,
yes.
What do you do?
No one's maybe once or twice. Someone's asked me, like, seriously, do you have to do this? Since this is a rare opportunity for me to talk to somebody internationally. So first of all, I'm sorry, and second of all, are you frightened of America and Americans?
Absolutely not. I love America. I've been there on multiple occasions. It's great, and I love Americans. I've got American family, so yeah, there's no problem there. I'm frightened. Okay, let's phrase it this way. I'm frightened of some Americans, but on the whole, no, not at all.
Well, since soccer, as you guys call it, football, because that's more accurate than our version of football, is very popular. Is that the same in Australia? I mean, Australia rules football. I don't know if cricket's big there. I was thinking, like, what's the sport? That's the thing.
I'm not very good at sport, so I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. But for me, like soccer, again, that's like Facebook and Twitter. It will never catch on.
See, there you go. So this is a dumb question for an American to ask an Australian, or someone who lives in Australia. But so, like, one time in Australia, you had a mass shooting, and then you had like the weirdest reaction, like you banned guns. What happened there? It doesn't seem legit.
Yeah, so you're probably referring to the Port Arthur massacre in Hobart. I could be getting that wrong, but yeah, basically the Prime Minister said, "Right, no more guns, you lot, okay?" And then everyone went, "Yeah, all right." And then everyone handed the guns in, and then there weren't any more shootings.
See, the thing that you can actually name a shooting and people go, "Oh yeah, that one," because we probably had two during the recording of the show. That's America's thing. It's different. It's refreshingly logical, I guess, is a way to put it.
But you only have to look at the UK as well. It's been 12 years since I lived there, but the police don't even have guns when they walk around. They don't. They're not armed. They have guns in the back of the cars should they need them, like the armed response unit would. But generally, they've just got sticks and massive hats.
Yeah, I like the hats.
Yeah, hats are good.
I think that was a joke that Robin Williams did about police in England, like, stop, or I'll say stop again. Because
exactly.
I got this club thing.
Yeah. I'll throw this sausage at you.
Yeah, it's dangerous right there. Yeah. Now, you are a musically inclined person. You do little musical bits. I see a guitar in your background for those who are just listening an audio version. Yep. So do you do like a song for each patron that joins your flock? Because you need a flock.
Yeah, I can do a song for you now if you want.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Is this a first on the Zachrilege podcast?
I had one singer before, and that was pretty awesome. So yeah.
All right.
But just here we go.
Tune. Ooh, Zach, will you come back and listen again to the Conversations with God podcast? It's not very long, a bit like this song. Ooh, the Conversations with Podcast God. That's the sort of high level audio we do.
Let's do the golf clap. Yes. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. God likes songs. God likes musicals. He gets very excited when we do a new song or when we do a chat about a musical or anything camp like that. So keeps him happy. Keeps the big fella happy.
Well, you do an atheist kind of themed podcast. Do you get involved at all in like local kind of atheist community in Australia at all? Or is it like, podcast is good?
The last one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Going to meet people is overrated.
Yeah, because I know at some point we'll clash.
Yeah, we have to have some kind of podcaster feud. It'll be good.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We can work that through. It'll probably be over a certain type of beer. Are you much of a beer guy? I know it's like 8 a.m, so clearly you've only had 2 before we go to work. But do you have a favorite style? Do you care about it?
Yeah, love the old pale ales. Love the craft beers. But probably favorite beer would be a beer called Longhorn, which is an English beer, so I can't get it here. Which is I
was wondering, do they do a lot? I mean, is it just like the very big brands, like maybe Bass, Newcastle types that get to Australia, or do they just
like 10 years ago? You went to a pub and there was probably 5 different beers. Now there's just craft beers everywhere. They're kind of the go-to. Moving away from just the sort of fizzy, weak stuff. It's now just actually stuff that doesn't taste like I don't know, rubbish beer. But yeah, love wine as well. That's good. And Australia does some really good wine. So Yeah.
Does God ever bring you wine, or is that more of a Jesus thing?
We did. God drank wine in episode 39. We started that episode in a church listening to a service, and he got so annoyed that he actually cracked a bottle of wine open and started drinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think God would probably react that way.
Yeah.
So before we call it a day, is there anything else that I didn't cover that you would want to talk about? And we will get to the show promotion part after that.
No, I think I'm not very good at interviews, as you've probably discovered. So let's spare the listeners any more of my tedious answers, and call it a day. But it's been awesome coming on, and I appreciate you giving me the time and give us a listen.
Now, if people want to reach you, two options: email you or pray. What do you think would work better?
Prayer's going to bypass me. That'll go straight to God. But email, yeah, that generally works. A lot of my work day, I literally sit looking at my inbox, waiting for someone to email me. So yeah, email me, conversationswithgodpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah.
It's not much to ask people. It's not.
No. I email in with a question for the Lord, because we do, like I said, we do those in questions from mortals, and he always answers those. He'll never answer your prayers, but he will answer your question if you email in and ask him on the podcast.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you, Tony, for being on, taking the time, doing a morning interview. That's you're sacrificing.
I am. No, thank you so much for having me on, and have a great day.
Excellent.
Too bad New Zealanders are a bunch of cocky a-holes descended from criminals and retarded monkeys.
Are you thinking of Australians?
Yeah, that's Australians.
That's Australians.
Live read. Do you really want to hear about the Democratic debates? Get your hand down, Deborah. I didn't think so. If you want to go personal, I'll go with this week's Chrisiosity, in which she discusses a sober decision she made recently. Also, if you want to be extra depressed, check out White Lies from NPR. A couple of native Alabamans look into the 1965 murder of Minister James Reeb. It's really good, gripping, relatively short in the number of episodes, and these two Southern guys do not try to tell you the right way to say pecan or pecan. See, I just ruined it. If you want to support this show, be like Bobby, Hugh Teote, Larry Darrell, the other Darrell, Free Thinker 215 and his totally healthy Simpsons obsession, Chris Watson, and support the show on Patreon. Patreon.com/Zachrilege. Never banned on social media. Follow me on Twitter, like my Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, and send all mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thank you to Tony for being on tonight. I have no upcoming guests yet, but I always live in hope. Until next time, let's continue the conversation.